This video is on Chapter 7, entitled Managing Conflict, from our Management for Church Leaders Volume Number 1 Training Manual. Again, you want to begin by going to the instruction box and understanding the purpose for this particular chapter. This is one of the important chapters in the manual that you want to allow a lot of time for, at least an hour and a half, because conflict is something they need to discuss and work out. So there's an exercise here at the end that will take quite a bit of time, at least 30 minutes. But the key point here is in managing conflict is to help keep the church moving forward, keep the ministry moving forward. So there's some notes in here that you can read, and this is about understanding that conflict is going to occur because the church is about people, and wherever you have people, there's going to be conflict. So it's important for the leaders to understand that and to be prepared on how to manage conflict so that the church can progress and not get stagnated because of conflict that's going on. We next talk about the importance of managing conflict, and again, it's because conflict exists, and so it needs to be managed in order to keep the ministry from being bogged down dealing with conflict. We then talk about the different sources of conflict, and they can be from members and people and different situations that go on in the church. And finally, we talk about the causes of conflict. And we really want to emphasize this, that there's an underlying cause to all conflict. And it's really Satan, our sinful world, and our sinful nature. These are the things that really cause conflict. And that's what we want to emphasize, not just the sources and the reasons, but that it's really Satan acting in this world that's causing much of the conflict that we experience, not only in churches, but in life in general. Next, we talk about some of the reasons for conflict, which can come from unclear goals, lack of planning, some of those basic things that go on in the church. And then we talk about how to recognize conflict. And this is important too, because some conflict is very obvious, but there's a lot of things that go on in the church that are not obvious, that are warning signs to potential conflict, and we want to make the leaders aware of this. This next section deals with how to resolve conflict. And we use the scripture from Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 17, where Jesus lays out the procedure that we are to use to resolve conflict in the church. Now, there's two situations that you may have to resolve conflict. One is when you're in conflict with someone else, and you need to have a process to resolve that conflict. The second is where you may be called to mediate a conflict. In either of these two cases, the point is you want to solve it peacefully, and you want to solve it effectively. Finally, at the end of this chapter, we want to talk about getting beyond conflict. And the key way that Christians get beyond conflict is through forgiveness, and that forgiveness is power. And it's only through forgiveness that we can actually get beyond conflict. And finally, we want to make the point that not all conflict is bad. Sometimes conflict can produce great outcomes for the church, because when conflict arises, it leads us to a better solution than what we're doing today. The exercise at the end of this chapter is very important, because this exercise can take up to 30 minutes. There are 5 different situations that the participants need to come up with a solution for a particular conflict. So we recommend that you break them up into 5 different groups and have each group handle one of the conflicts, so that each group is discussing a different conflict and what they see as the process to resolving that conflict. Again, the exercise is intended to root out the process, not to come up with a solution, because they're not going to have all the information, but to focus on the process of coming up with a solution.